Hi, everybody. Matt Charlson here with DataBank. DataBank is an unstructured data company, really cool time out of industry when you think about content and the impact that AI is having on our content. And I'm here with my friend Kaitlin Hart from Pryon. How you doing, Kaitlin?
Hi, nice to see you.
Good to see you. Good. Thanks for joining us. Do you want to say a little bit about yourself and Pryon for a moment before we dive in?
Yeah, sure. Kaitlin Hart, Director of Strategic Partnerships over here at Pryon, of which DataBank is one. Pryon is focused on the AI space. The technical term is RAG, but really it's about turning your unstructured data into secure applications at scale.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Caitlin, you joined our innovation event back in June. So, thanks again for doing that. Had a really cool presentation on the intersection between what Pryon delivers. And then we had a lot of people in the audience that were OnBase content management, OnBase ECM users. So, really cool conversation around that. But maybe talk a bit about how your company is leveraging AI right now. Maybe start with a simple use case just to kind of put everybody in a frame of reference for what it is Pryon does with this unstructured data.
Yeah, I mean, AI is a data product, right? And so when you think about the opportunities of what you can do with AI and data together, you can build applications. A lot of the challenges within the AI space, revolve around security, scalability, reliable information. We see
Sure.
this with ChatGPT, a great advancement of AI. Certainly, people now want to talk to me about AI and machine learning, which I can say specifically they did not want to beforehand. It was just me and a bunch of nerds in a corner chatting with ourselves,
Sure.
typically about data. Now, everyone, even my hairdresser, wants to talk about AI thanks to the popularity of things like ChatGPT. But it's designed to keep users engaged. It's not designed to be accurate. It's not designed to provide, a clear route between ROI and business value. And that's really where Prime can come into play, where we can supply that same type of chat interface. That's the most common one that people are familiar with, that natural language interaction with your company data. But we do it without any hallucinations because we're working with company content or whatever content has been designated. And we don't train our models on any data. So you don't have to worry about IP leakage or security
Mhm.
issues in that way. And you also don't need to worry about training your own models, right? So a lot of people, think that to get customization results, they need to build their own LLM, which is very costly and very time consuming. So we can cut that part out of the equation. We're LLM agnostic, right? But there's things you can do from a post model perspective. Yeah. I don't know if that was too detailed.
No, I think that was great, and I think you keyed on something I wanted to drill into a little bit when you talk about retrieval augmented generation. So RAG, as you referred to it, right? So there's a big difference between leveraging some of these tools that are trained on public data, public internet data, versus the company's collection of their proprietary data. So talk a little bit about the major difference there, right? Because you mentioned the word hallucinations. I'm sure everybody's probably heard what that means by now, but can you say a little bit more about why that's better in an enterprise versus somebody just subscribing to ChatGPT and trying to make things happen?
Yeah, I mean, a very simple example is acronyms. Every line of business, every department has an acronym that they use. Engineering versus finance, they might use the same exact acronym. It looks the same, but it means two completely different things. And
Sure.
so if you aren't a trained content repository, right, on specific sets of data or specific sets of users, you could answer those same questions interchangeably. And because again, ChatGPT is designed for user engagement, right? I know exactly what they were designed for. They are looking to drive engagement so that then they can get more data and get more input. They're not designed for accuracy.
Mhm.
So if you answer a question that's wrong without confidence, people might move away. But if you answer a question with confidence, whether or not it's right or wrong, you will keep people engaged and you'll keep going. You see all kinds of interesting use cases
Sure.
of people thinking that they're even developing relationships with ChatGPT. And that's because humans project that type of emotion. But, you know, ChatGPT is just math.
Check out the podcast. Gosh, what was it called? Flesh and Code, for a good example of people developing relationships with their AI. I mean, it's out there. It's it's out there, but it was good.
I mean, sometimes that's good enough, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't need to be an accurate, real relationship.
Right.
Sometimes you just want something or someone to chat with, and ChatGPT can provide that. But in a business context, you don't want people just staying engaged and going down the path of something that's wrong or inaccurate. because what could that actually mean to your customers? What could that mean
Yeah.
to the decisions that are made within your business? And then the other side of the equation is that if you have an employee who is freely using ChatGPT or something similar, and they input all of the company data into the engine, right?
Mm.
You can never get that data back out.
Right.
And
And
that
we're
data
using that for
now,
training down the road. Right.
and that data now is in there. And I
Yeah.
can give a good example of using ChatGPT for something like searching for jobs, right? I think a lot of
Mm.
people do that, maybe creating cover letters. Well, so, you're applying for jobs, you ask ChatGPT to create a cover letter. You might actually see who else from your company is applying for jobs and creating cover letters.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that happens. You could probably check that out right now. Can get people in trouble, right? That's just on a personal basis. But think about that on a macro level across your business. What type of data and IP might be getting back into that model? And again, once it's in the model, you can't ever get it out.
Right. So essentially, Prion's sitting on top of these repositories, right? Whether it's a Highland repository or SharePoint. I imagine there's some more common ones that you integrate with, but really you're sitting on there from a repository agnostic standpoint, on top of the repositories. In some cases, just driving through, maybe decades of content to look for answers to, user questions, or helping evaluate policies, evaluate, different pretty complex queries, right? That would take, in the pre-Pryon world, or would take a human very long ever to actually get to an accurate answer to that question, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so it's important to, one, not make people lift and shift their data, because there are different teams and different parts of a company that are going to use different repositories. That's natural. We don't want to make people do that. Typically, when people start on their data journey, the first step is, okay, where are we going to put all this data? And that itself can be a 2-year journey. And that's even before you get to the point of building applications to then help with productivity and help change the way that your business operates. So we can cut out that part of the equation altogether by directly integrating, right, with the most common repositories, like OnBase, SharePoint, Dropbox, and some of the other ones that are out there.
We worked together jointly on a project for an OnBase CCM and Pryon integration. Very large county. You guys presented together at the innovation event. What was the goal of their project? What were they trying to ultimately get to? And maybe what challenges did we see along the way? Any insight on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of different use cases that happen across the entire county, as they do across an entire company. So typically, what you're looking for, especially from their perspective, they need to show value really quickly and easily. And so looking at, record search is something that is a problem. And that's kind of where we started looking with them. Ultimately, they're looking to arm many other departments, right? Many people across the organization to do different things more efficiently, but also to help them actually get to the information they need. Now, when we think about like traditional search, it's a very manual process, right? I mean, we can go onto almost any website and use a search bar, and we don't get an answer back. We get a list of options to look through and do research on to see if the answer to our question might exist in there. I mean, that takes forever. And most of us, we're just going to take an answer and try to get it back to our customer or try to get it back to the field, or we can't answer it at all, right? And so you think about just optimizing the ability to find the information. That's a huge thing for them, especially when you look at records that exist across decades, different departments and different people. So that's where we started, but there's certainly other ideas that they have for different ways to utilize it across the county.
You mentioned websites, and obviously being able to consume a company's website to get the information quicker is one thing. But the other thing that popped in my head was you were talking there too about, we do a lot of work with companies that are going through M&A activities, right? Particularly like in the energy sector. And in that case, one company has acquired assets from another. You've collected a bunch of records to go along with that that weren't known to you prior. So you've got these records, maybe millions or billions of records that you need to ingest and deal with, as opposed to a collection of records that have been in your possession for 10 to 20 years. Now you're dealing with a new set of records, maybe get some questions, understand some basics around what you've got in there. So talk a little bit. Is that a proper use case for a tool like Pryon?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I would say every customer starts with some set of data discovery, because as much as we think we know our data, we never truly know it until we get our hands in it, right? And we start asking the questions. You think about, if you have different repositories, there might be different versions of the same root information. well, which version is the best version,
Okay.
right? Which
Right.
version is the most accurate one? And so there's ways to actually refine it. But one of the other things that comes up, especially in a use case like M&A or audits, record audits is another really big
Legal,
use
right?
case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Legal, right? Is the traceability that comes with something like Pryon,
Mhm.
where we can actually show what people have searched for and when, so that you can then go back and confirm, like, okay, who has access to what was actually asked, especially from an auditing perspective. Did they do everything that you wanted them to do? And so that's something that you can do once you have this data kind of cultivated together.
Well, security is obviously a top of mind there too. So I'm glad you brought that up. But a lot of times Pryon is going to be sitting on top of and working with an existing repository with existing credentials and ACLs, those types of lockdown security. How does Pryon either respect the security of the repository or that content so that I'm not asking a question I shouldn't be, or I'm not getting the results that I'm not authorized to, that type of scenario. So obviously
Yeah,
you
that's a
can't
good
prevent somebody
question.
from asking a wrong question, asking a question they shouldn't, but you can, ultimately limit what they get access to. So how does it work in that context?
Well, you can actually limit what questions will be
Ah,
answered. So
okay.
that's something you do in prompt engineering. If a question comes in that's already on like a restricted kind of list, then you can just say, "I'm sorry, that's not something we can answer," or you can have a little more personality and be like, a little kittier about it, depending on how much generative you want to use at the end there. And then in terms of data permissions, that's a great thing about having integrations that we built ourselves, right? Is that we can then carry over the permissions of those applications and respect
Okay.
those. So that, I mean, you're the CEO, I'm just a lowly person out here, director. We're going to have access to different types of information. You probably know everything in the world. Me, a very small part of that world, right? That has been cordoned off to me, excludes HR data, finance data, right? Those kind of typical use cases. So that's
Yeah.
something we can do. If there are other kind of more specific permissions types of or security requests, you can go as far as separating out the data from each other. We use the term collections to talk about like different folders of information or different
Mhm.
classes of information. And so you can also do that systematically. And then, of course, there's different things you can do throughout from the front end application from a user verification validation perspective as well.
Got it. Got it. But we're not having to reinvent that security structure, replicate that security structure in the Pryon scheme. We can respect what's already
No,
established and past
exactly.
audits and process control and all that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, somebody has an RBAC system that they have built out and
Right.
they love. Most of the time, people find areas that they want to improve as they kind of go through this process because they think about, oh, okay, well, now I have a lot more flexibility to do restrictions or to do data access. Some bigger government agencies are not interested in restricting the access to information. They want to let people use this as more like a central Google, but
Yeah.
they want the traceability and the auditability of what questions are asked so they can understand how somebody might be using the system and what questions they may be looking for.
Yeah. That's super insightful to be able to understand where to point the future from a use case standpoint. If I understand the general theme of my questions that I'm getting from this wide audience, that might point me where to go next and what to tackle
Yeah.
next. Because there are a lot of use cases. There's a lot here for companies to absorb and a lot of existing places where you can get a lot of value. So where do most people start? Like when you're working with a new client, where are they generally started in one place and then they're working their way through their enterprise or their organization? How does that
Yeah.
generally work?
Yeah. They typically are going to start with, well, either the biggest fire, right? If
Hmm.
there's an audit that's
Sure.
happening right now, well, we need to do that. We need to make this audit go smoother and faster and get less people involved in it, right? So whatever fire is burning, that
Hmm.
does drive it. Generally speaking, when someone's looking to take on this kind of approach, they start with a data set that they have the most familiarity with, right? So that they can go in and ask questions and already kind of be experts on the content. Because that's the other thing is you think about subject matter experts, right? Each department or each use case typically has a different one. And so finding a good group of content that somebody has that good understanding of so they can go through and know how to use it is a good place to start.
Like in policies and procedures, you probably be that's the one I hear about the most for technology
I
like
mean,
this to get started, right?
even from a really easy use case, you think about marketing materials for new business acquisition, right? There's a lot of websites out there where it's hard to find information
Yeah.
on a company. And so maybe you want to start there for an external use case. Maybe internally, the same thing, some sort of wiki. You want to convert that to make it a little bit more accessible and searchable.
Sure. Okay, got it. What? So again, yeah, a lot to absorb and a lot for people to tackle today. What's Pryon most excited about for the future of this technology, or this part of the AI world? What are you guys excited about in terms of where this is going, or what's the future look like?
Oh, well, that's a good question. Well, so again, I'm a nerd. So this is very exciting for me. And this is actually why I joined Pryon. I spent most of my career in structured data. And that's what people know today
Yeah.
as data.
Yeah.
We don't talk about unstructured data as data. We talk about it as content. We've segmented them specifically because we can't use unstructured data the same way as we can structured data. But
Until
that's
now,
really
right?
changed.
Yeah.
Now we have the process. RAG is essentially, it's very similar to an ETL process, but
Mhm.
for unstructured data, right? And so now we have that same ability to convert that data and build applications on that data, some of which chat or search or help desks or maintenance, operational procedures, auditing. But that's really just the beginning. That's one kind of flow of data. And then you have structured data, which is another flow of data. Combining those two types of data is really the next phase of power, right? Because now you really are having a central data pipeline that you can pull together
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
ask different questions and get different insights. You think about a simple use case of there's all kinds of alerting platforms out there, and Prime doesn't want to take over alerting, but being able to pull alerting in with your unstructured data could be really interesting, right? And provide a lot more power to end users in their day-to-day work lives, and then also into executives, right? Being able to get the insights of what a total day in the life looks like for their employees and how
Sure.
they can better provide efficiency, right? The more data you have access to, the more you have that auditability and that verification, right? Because we provide that back to the end users. They always know where the answer is coming from. They don't have to guess. They provide access to other layers of data into the same place. Like, that's a lot of power. Now, that's a nerdy response. So I don't know if I went too off the rails there.
And I think that's great.
I've spent a lot of time with customers, right? And I'm somebody who really cares about practical solutions for people. And the amount of people out there who have problems with just data discovery, with getting data into the hands of their employees or their network, it's huge. We've created all these end applications to try and solve these problems. We've created, search keyword, and it hasn't worked with all these different approaches. What does work, though, is providing a clear answer to questions.
And we like to think, like at DataBank, we like to think that we know the industry analysts have told us that 80 to 90% of an enterprise's data is unstructured, right? So it's in content, right? It's in SharePoint sites and websites and ECM systems and files. So only 10 to 20% of it's in a structured format where you've been able to do these types of queries and analytics and all those things for years. 80 to 90% of it's not part of that. So enter this type of technology. We believe there's a massive opportunity for companies to take advantage of this and say, okay, I've got my data domains. So I've got my customer domain, my employee domain, my product domain, whatever it might be. But a lot of data in that domain is missing because it's in this content, right? Which is 80, 90% of my data. It's in these places that are hard to reach, hard to get to, hard to query until now. I think there's a really huge opportunity for people to pull that information together, the structured and the unstructured, to answer questions they haven't been able to answer before, get a better insight on trend, just all of that, that has been missing, right? And so from really the dawn of data until now. So I mean, we're excited about this too, guys. We're excited to be a partner with you guys and really happy to see where all this could go going forward.
Yeah, me too. I could nerd out about all kinds of different things that hopefully the future will bring us. But, like I said, I'm a practical person at the end of the day. And I really just think that people want to find things easier. We don't need more data created, right? I think a lot of people think about generative and AI as being able to create more data. We have tons of data. We have,
plenty.
petabytes of data being created on a daily basis. What we need is more value out of the data we have.
Yeah, yeah, and tools that can get us that value. Pryon.
Exactly.
So, if someone's interested in learning more about this technology, definitely reach out to your contacts at DataBank, and we'd be happy to help line up conversations and get some proof of concept discussions going and talk about readiness and use cases. So, Kaitlin, great to see you again. Thanks so much for the time today. Great stuff, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, sounds great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
See ya.